A Journey Through Friendship, Peace and Love. An LSD Trip Report by Blue Dolphin. Posted to earwid.org, October 20th, 2005. Introductions. W. A new friend and housemate. An overall well-intentioned and fun guy to hang out with. He's only tripped once before, on 1/2 of shrooms. Supposedly during this trip, he freaked out and ran for 6 miles down some railroad tracks. So tonight, wanting to trip again but hoping for less of a mind rape, nonetheless he decided on about 16 milligrams of 2CI. T. Another new friend. His experience with psychedelics is limited, but he takes the psychedelic experience very seriously. T had managed to get a hold of 2.5 of the reputably strong fly blotters that now seem to be flooding the northeast US. By my estimations, there are 2 to 3 times as strong as the fractals that everyone was so excited about during the summer jam band tours. T would be eating 1.25 flies. S. My girlfriend, soulmate, and true love. After a short breakup, we got back together only a few days ago. Her psychedelic experience is close to mine. She would also be taking about 16 milligrams of 2CI. Me. The last 2 months of my life have been loveless chaos, going through the motions of everyday life. I'm experienced enough with psychedelics that I don't need to list them. I've taken LSD twice before, but never anything nearly as strong as these flies would turn out to be. I had very high hopes for this night, and my mindset was excellent. I was ready for anything, from a trippy buzz to a rebirth. I'd be eating 1.25 fly blotters. The experience of a lifetime. Around 7:15 PM, we all took our doses. While waiting to come up, we chilled in my dorm room and listened to some tunes. After about 15 minutes, I swallowed my blotter and could already feel the familiar tingle. We put a DVD in my computer with all the Smashing Pumpkins music videos, and we watched a few of them. By the third music video, I was already paying equal attention to the vibrant and changing colours of everything in the room. We decided we'd all had enough music videos, and I went to use the bathroom. I walked out of my room and into a hallway of ever-changing pastel colours. My first attempt to open the bathroom door failed, as the doorknob bent out of reach at the last second. I grabbed it and walked into a tile and glass funhouse. Rainbow patterns were sliding across the tile floor, as paint was dripping down the door. Already, I was amazed at how visual and vibrant the trip had become. And it was just over half an hour since I dropped. I got back to the room, and we all decided to go for a walk. I suggested we walk to the Sunken Gardens, an outdoor mini amphitheatre of sorts, surrounded by modern art sculptures, and in a very secluded part of campus. As soon as we stepped outside, I noticed that the air quality was vastly superior to the air quality in my room. I also felt like I was about 10 feet tall and floating above the ground. I was able to walk normally, save a few times when I stopped dead in my tracks to ask where we're going. On the walk to the Sunken Gardens, S and T had begun tripping, while W was feeling the 2CI's energy and euphoria, but not really the psychedelic effects yet. We walked down the long secluded driveway to the gardens, running back and forth across the road, creating a 4-person weave. We finally got there, and I had no idea that the Sunken Gardens could be so alive and chaotic. Light was strobing over the grass and structures, like some kind of trippy spotlight. Every sound was amplified to such an extreme that I thought cars driving down a road far off through the woods were right next to me. I lay down on the grass and closed my eyes, only to melt into the earth below me, and witness the most complex, detailed, crisp, and colourful closed-eye visuals I've ever seen. I can't really describe it, but if you've seen some really trippy and complex art before, it might be something like that. Except, imagine it being alive and having deep meaning. By this time, S was having the most intense psychedelic experience of her life as well. She was flooded with visuals from the 2CI, and seemed to be handling the intensity of it very well. W was standing below a tree that T had climbed, and now was apparently stuck in. After some time, T got down, to his great relief. T then went behind some bushes. W asked him what was going on, and T said he had become the tree itself, and was feeling the needs of the tree. I was observing all this from my point of view, which was laying down on the ground next to a stone wall. I saw a shadow in the stone wall turn into a man and walk away. Curiously, without even mentioning this, S said she saw a shadow turn into a man and climb a tree near the wall. W really wanted to move on, so we decided to go down to the boathouse by the lake and maybe take a walk along the railroad tracks right next to it. In order to do this, we would likely encounter some heavy foot traffic, since we would have to walk down the main road that goes through campus for a while. Well, as long as we kept going and don't get distracted along the way, I guess it would be alright. Yeah, right. We made it about 100 feet before we encountered the weirdest tree ever. It was shaped like a mushroom and had no leaves and weird droopy branches. It seemed to be growing, and when I walked towards it, it moved towards me as well. This surprised me, and I dodged the tree just to make sure it couldn't grab me. I spent a few moments admiring the bright and growing grass next to my feet, and then noticed that T was using one of the pieces of modern art sculptures as some kind of ergonomically designed seat. We all thought this was hilarious, until we realised that the art didn't seem to be holding his weight very well. Anyway, we kept moving and got up to the main road. When we passed by my house, I decided it would be a good idea to carry some water and herb with us, since I planned on staying down by the tracks for a while. We crossed it up and went inside, where many of my housemates were sober and watching a movie. I went upstairs to fill up my water bottle, and then went into my room to collect myself and rest for the journey ahead. I sat down in my chair, put on some Sound Tribe Sector 9, and closed my eyes. Soon afterwards, I felt another presence enter the room, and I watched our energies intertwine. Wow. I opened my eyes and T was sitting right in front of me. I hadn't even heard him come in, but somehow I could feel his energy there. I told him what happened and he seemed to understand. Soon enough, everyone had come up to my room, and we were just chilling up there listening to music for a while, until we remembered that we had intended to go down to the boathouse. I grabbed a Butterfinger, opened it, and then stared at the shimmery butter brittle after breaking off a piece for T. It took me about 10 minutes to take the first bite. Meanwhile, we'd all forgotten our intentions to go down to the boathouse again. There was so much involved in the experience of taking a bite of this Butterfinger that it was pretty intense and not something to be taken lightly. Somehow, we ended up outside behind the house, slowly getting back on our way. S was tripping hard by now and looked absolutely beautiful. T thought he had broken his sweatshirt and was in tears, and W was cracking up at the hilarity of it all. I still had only taken one bite of my Butterfinger. I asked S to hold it for me. After I gave it to her, I said, that Butterfinger had become a burden by now. Apparently this was the most hilarious thing any of us had ever heard, because the whole campus could have heard us all laughing behind the house for a solid 5 minutes. We walked back up to the street, and there were some cars coming, so I waited to cross. Apparently, not long enough though, because I stepped out only to realise that there was one more car coming, and stopped dead in my tracks in the middle of the road to let the final car pass. Across the street, we walked along the lake and saw a couple of girls carrying a sign and a large stuffed dog. They were campaigning for the stuffed dog to be mayor, and obviously rolling, so I stopped to chat with them. I ended up having an interesting chat and getting a hookup for rolls. Not bad. Soon enough, a huge crowd was heading our way down the sidewalk, seemingly out of nowhere. W was finally starting to trip. The 2CI took forever to hit him completely, and he got a little freaked out by the crowd. S and I stood there exchanging nods with the people in this huge group of party crashers as they walked by. T got distracted talking to someone in the crowd, and we lost him for a few minutes. When we found him, he seemed pretty disoriented, so we walked down the path to the boathouse. Along the path, as we passed by, a few of the students were smoking bowls. I noticed how good I physically felt compared to just about every other psychedelic right now. My stomach felt a bit tight, but not to the point where it became a distraction. Otherwise, I felt like I was walking on air. We got down to the boathouse and walked out onto the floating segmented dock. We all laid down on the dock and felt the waves below us. I felt like I was melting into the water as I closed my eyes and enjoyed the serenity of it all. With my eyes closed, complex psychedelic visual stories took place. With my eyes open, the stars above would dart about freely in the night sky. We spent a good amount of time sitting out by the boathouse, enjoying the warm breeze blowing over the water. I sat there with S, resting her head on my lap, and she just looked absolutely beautiful. After a few moments though, her face began to morph into some frightening and contorted distortions. Inside of each of her eyes was a burning fire. I wondered what it meant, but I decided not to dwell on it. After a while had passed, we decided to go for a walk down the railroad tracks. On the way there I saw creatures with glowing eyes looking at me from the brush on the side of the tracks. I mentioned this to S, who said that the creatures were friendly. Good enough for me. We soon came to a fire pit between the train tracks and the lake. W stepped out into the water, holding his hands up in the air in the direction that the wind was coming from. I watched his spirit extend out from behind his body. By this point, I was finally ready to smoke a bowl, now almost 6 hours after having dosed. But we soon realised that we didn't even have a bowl to smoke out of, so we decided to head back to my room. On the way back there were lots of kids sitting out on the boathouse deck. W and T are sailors, so they yelled, "Get the fuck off the boathouse," and "Security!" and threw a few pebbles towards the kids. Basically being dicks, but we all cracked up uncontrollably after that. We got back to my room and smoked a bowl. After we'd done this, my trip came back almost full force, although it hadn't worn down significantly anyway. T went to Irwood's art gallery, and we looked at psychedelic art for about an hour. I've never looked at art that way before. Not only were the images coming out of my monitor in 3 dimensions, often levitating inches away from the screen, but every part of the art was constantly growing, pulsating, and changing with infinitely more detail than sober eyes could ever behold. In each piece of art, there were thousands of stories to be told, and I could follow the progress of each living piece of art through the image. It was absolutely beautiful. I went to use the bathroom again, and once again entered a glass and tile funhouse. I stared at my face in the mirror and watched it more for a while. Then, somehow, the image in the mirror became another me. I realised I was looking at myself in the mirror from the perspective of everybody else. Normally, I think I must seem a bit odd to other people, but I realised that I am to everyone else as they are to me. W had decided to wander off on his own, as his trip was still going full force, since it took so long to kick in for whatever reason. T hadn't slept in 2 full days, and his trip seemed to be wearing down, so he called it quits as well. Now it was just me and S, and we were both still tripping very hard. What took place during the next 2 hours was the most incredible and perfect love that has ever been made between 2 people. Words can't describe how amazing it was, nor would I even want to try. I will say though, that it was the most passionate and best sex we've had in the almost 3 years that we've been together, and our bond is closer now than ever because of it. Afterwards, we laid in bed talking. I was amazed that I was still tripping, and said that if this were any other time, I would love to trip like I was tripping right now. But by this point, around 4 AM, I was physically exhausted. The 2CI was still keeping S awake. Likewise, the closed-eye visuals that consisted of complex and random chain reaction, Dali-esque machines were also keeping me awake. So we stayed up talking, and generally confusing each other, cracking up frequently, until finally, exhaustion won the battle, and I drifted off to sleep around 5 AM, almost 10 hours after having dosed. Retrospection. What I experienced last night was indeed the perfect trip. I'm amazed at the power of LSD to provide such a full, complex, beautiful, and important trip. I believe LSD is indeed the holy grail of psychedelics, and I can easily see why this chemical is considered by far to be the most important psychedelic in modern history. Please don't take LSD if you're just looking for eye candy and a buzz. Take LSD if you are ready to have your mind blown in ways you never imagined possible. Let it flow. Well, that was like the ideal trip, wasn't it really? Just went completely great for them. Such a glowing experience. Just shows you that, yeah, This also highlights another aspect of the psychedelic experience that I need to focus on more in the future, deepening the connection with others, because of a lot of the time, I focus on sort of like solo trips, solo missions, which do produce the deepest mystical transcendent experience. But there's also a great deal of insight and revelations and just like personal development for you and your friends if you take it together in a wise manner, great set and setting, and you all have like more or less pure intentions about it. Everyone seemed to be on the same level here. It wasn't like there was one out of the group who was like, I'm just gonna take 500 milligrams of 2CI and get fucked, because if someone did that, that just throws a spanner into the works and completely derail the trip. But his girlfriend, his friend, and then his other friend, they were all just on the same page about what they wanted. They just wanted to sort of have a trippy time and deepen the bond between each other and just enjoy themselves. Because I know obviously one of the big takeaways from the sort of like psychedelic experience is just don't mess with these tools and don't treat them as just a piece of escapism. But there is a recreational aspect to psychedelics, whether you like it or not. Like a lot of sort of shamanistic minded people and like heavy psychonaut non-dualist people will be like, oh, there is no you shouldn't be using these for recreation, they're not recreational tools. And it's like, they're not really. They're tools for like expanding your consciousness and experiencing altered states and deepening your spiritual component. But there is a recreational aspect to it. I mean, they've been used recreationally for a very, very long time, especially in sort of like the raving like festival scene, and especially say like in universities or college, where a lot of people do it for the first time. What will initially inspire you to do it for most people, I'd say, I'm just going off like my experience with all my friends and people I know have taken psychedelics, it was all recreational. It was all to like enhance the fun they're having whilst partying, or just like getting on it with your friends on the sesh. That is oftentimes what starts you down this path, and it doesn't become like deeper until you've had more and more experiences doing it recreationally, and then you sort of get that spiritual component thrown in, and you're like, whoa, this is getting pretty deep, and that's when you start going down the rabbit hole big time. But when you just first start out, it's all just fun and games, and there is a beauty in that as well. And it wasn't just like this guy took it, I just want to have a sick time. He knew what he wanted out of the experience. He clearly just wanted to have a deep bonding experience with his friends and have fun in the meantime, and also experience an altered state. And fair play to our lad, he got some premium shaggins in the end with his missus. So big ups there. But that was that's probably the most transcendental experience that he had. Obviously didn't go into too much detail because I mean, it doesn't need to be some erotic fan fiction or anything. But I've talked about that in the other, I think it was the San Pedro report I featured a few days ago, where there was a really beautiful conjoining of the spirit via sex. And that is something I'll also touch upon again in the future, because it is another aspect of the psychedelic experience, and also the other cool mystical practices that I'm fascinated in, like tantric sex and that. I need to look for more that are just like purely about that, although I know some people are squeamish about that, but hey ho, I want to focus on all the full spectrum of the psychedelic experience. So there's beauty and depth to that big time. I know from my personal experience, I've never actually gone the full mile, but I've definitely, in fact, I've definitely sort of experienced a glimpse of how deep it can go, and it's definitely worth experimenting with if you're a psychonaut on the friskier end of things. So not much really to say about this, other than I thought it was funny that they found that person, or was it two girls? They were campaigning for this stuffed dog to become mayor, and they were rolling on Molly. Or getting fucking wired on Mandy, as you'd say in the UK. But that's just so weird, like, what were they doing? Just, why? That's so strange. Is this what Americans do when they get wired? They start parading around college campuses, campaigning for fucking dogs to become mayor. That's like the strangest thing I've ever heard. Over here, when you just get wired, you just like fucking going in your back, like, oh my god, like, I'm fucking feeling this, me. We're just, in the UK, we're just like, absolutely, we're just fucking insane, like when it comes to consuming drugs and that. It's so much more extreme, I'd say, in comparison to like Americans getting on it, ending up in like a fucking gaff or a house for you Americans that don't know what gaff means, to like fucking 10 a.m. the next day, feeling like, oh, Bell and Burge again, like get them round, while you're absolutely munched off like 5 Garys or something. And in America, it's more like, wow, this Molly really hits different, you know. But yeah, it's all fun and games at the end of the day. I don't know what it's like to get raved up in America. I'd love to go and experience that. Sounds really fascinating. I mean, my main chunk of my audience is from the US. It's like, I looked on my analytics the other day, it's fucking serious amounts. One day I will come over and hopefully get on the sesh with you all, maybe. We'll do like some fucking Vivec convention where it's just like a secret party that we have underground, and we're all just like popping caps of Molly, bro, and we'll see what the American side of the sesh is all about. Right, absolutely chatting pure shit now, so we'll leave that. Hope you enjoyed this report, and I'll see you in the next one.